Good evening. Because it appears to be 6 p.m., we're going to go ahead and get started. Certainly, we'll let those who are signing in come on in. Please make sure you sign in before you leave tonight. I want to say that I'm Yolanda Thigpen, Community Engagement Coordinator for the Rocky Mount Police Department. So again, thank y'all so much for coming tonight. I'm going to allow our Chief of Police, Robert Hassel, to come and do a official welcome on behalf of, I'm sure, the City of Rocky Mount and the Police Department. And then he's also going to tell you guys why you're here tonight. So I'm always respectful of those who are in authority. Can we give our Chief a clap? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thigpen. And I would like to thank all of the citizens and community organizations and groups who found time to be here in this place tonight. As Ms. Thigpen said, I am Robert Hassel, the Chief of Police for the City of Rocky Mount. Why are we here? We're here to discuss gangs. We felt after I having several conversations with concerned parents who had, and a grandmother who have reached out to me, said, Chief, I have a grandson, or I have a son. I have somebody in my family that I would like for you to talk to. And they started that conversation with me because they just had a feeling, something they saw that may have suggested that their grandson may have been involved in something. And they just wanted someone positive, and they asking me if I could speak with their loved one about what's going on. And after a couple of those kind of conversations, I said to myself, I would like to put something on that we can invite parents, guardians, loved ones, community members to just come and hear a presentation from my capable staff about what are gangs, to raise the level of awareness about gangs here in our city. We also wanted to make sure from the Rocky Mount Police Department that even though we're going to talk about some statistics later, we see involvement of gangs on the decline. But I recognize there's still work that we need to do in our community. And I know here in Rocky Mount, we got a host of organizations, individuals, and groups that is their job. That is what their mission is, to do whatever they can to save every young man or every young girl from even getting into the life of gangs. And as your chief and as the members of my department are here, we want to make sure our community knows that we are here to partner with any organization, any community group in that effort. We know too often law enforcement is reactive. Something happens, we respond. It is my hope that as we'll talk about some of the efforts that we have done more on the side and many efforts of other individuals I know in this room in different groups, I've seen them, more on the preventative side and intervention side, so that what few individuals we may have in our city, we do everything within our power to help them, prevent them from even getting into a situation that may have consequences that lead them down a path that may lead them into the court system, into the jail, wherever, into the criminal justice system, I would say. And then even those who may be contemplating or may be on that path, what can we do as a community to intervene, to help get them the resources or the support they may need? So we tonight have partnered with two individual or organizations tonight, Peacemakers and the Mediation Center, and there are so many other groups. I see the faces in here that have worthwhile resources here in our community, and I would love to continue our partnerships with you. But tonight, we do have those two entities here tonight to help share information that can help keep our youth safe here in Rocky Mount, because as your chief, and I stand with every officer you see in this room and every officer you don't see, and all of the support staff that comes with that, it is our job to partner with our community to make sure we do everything we can to make sure this city is as safe as it possibly can be. But that's going to take collaboration and partnerships with all of us. So that is what the purpose is tonight, to talk a little bit about gangs, to raise your level of awareness, but then to also talk about, and you will hear messages from our community groups, if you see certain things, these are some tips that you can take to help hopefully prevent someone that you love from getting involved in such an activity or any other kind of activity that may be going on in the streets that we don't see. So welcome here tonight. I look forward to talking with those I haven't had the opportunity to talk to thus far. I will be here to the end of this event. So please come up to me, talk with me face to face. I'll love to hear your feedback on what you thought about the program tonight, and if there's anything else that we can do in the future of things such as this. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Chief Hassel. At this time, we're going to continue to move further in our event tonight. The person that's coming next, after I finish introducing her, is well capable of this presentation. She's done numerous presentations in our schools, in our city, and I'm certainly glad that she's able to be with us tonight. Sergeant Laurie Middlesworth is a 10-year employee with the Rocky Mount Police Department. She is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. She has a 4-year degree at North Carolina Wesleyan College in criminal justice. She works currently as in the violent offenders unit, and she is hold a advanced gang investigator certificate. And so again, we are proud to, as they say, present to some and introduce to others. My coworker, my colleague, our presenter for this evening, Sergeant Laurie Middlesworth. Let me also say, if you guys would hold, unless she changes her mind, if you would hold your questions until the presentation is over. Now again, if she says something different, I respect that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thigpen. Good evening again. Thank you all very much for coming and attending this class, because it is a very important presentation that our community definitely needs to hear. A brief overview of gang awareness is going to give us some common signs and symbols. We'll talk about some of the local gangs in Rocky Mount and follow up with some warning signs you can see in small children, juveniles, as well as some tips that you can use and take home to prevent anybody from joining a gang. So North Carolina law actually defines what a gang is. And a gang is a group of 3 or more people who identify themselves using certain signs, symbols, identifying tattoos, or physical markings in clothing. They engage as a group in violent criminal activity or intimidation for the purpose of furthering their gang. And the members may also have rules for joining the gang, as well as meet regularly, they physically protect other members of the gang in order to maintain a certain territory. I'm going to give you the average age of most gang members when they join the gang. However, this is just a national average, which is typically between the ages of 14 and 21 years old. However, we have seen some as young as 8 years old admit that they've been in a gang. And they typically, around the late 20s, early 30s, they'll either phase out of it. Unfortunately, they'll become incarcerated or other options. Recruitment typically begins in middle schools as early as 10 to 13 years old. Again, we have seen it a little bit younger, but again, the national average is typically around middle school. They're going to target at-risk youth that can easily be influenced to commit crimes. So there are 3 types of gangs that we have nationwide. So you have the traditional gangs, and these are going to be the ones that form in Southern California that started around the 1980s. They're going to have more organization to them. They're going to have nationwide rules and regulations. And you're also going to have non-traditional gangs, which are some of the more common gangs you'll find in your local communities. These are less organized, they're younger, and they tend to dissolve pretty quickly. They don't last very long. And then the third type is going to be your criminal enterprises. This might be the mafia, outlaw motorcycle gangs, anything like that, with drugs and murders and stuff like that. So, why do people join gangs? Why do juveniles join gangs? Typically for the promise of security or family. If they don't have a strong family at home, then they're going to try to find it elsewhere. A lot of times with kids in middle school or high school, they might join a gang for protection if they're being picked on around the lunchroom or at the playground. They'll try to join a group that might show them some kind of protection. They want to have some form of sense of belonging. So if they're not getting it at home, they're going to look for it elsewhere. And also the gangs might propose that they present that for them, even though it might not be true. The status of being in a gang, obviously peer pressure is one of the bigger things you'll see in middle schools. They might have a family member that's in a gang. Older siblings typically will try to get younger siblings to join as well. Or they might live in an area that has a very high gang presence. Very small now, so with movies and music and video games typically have some kind of influence on a child's decision of joining the gang as well. So some of the blood gangs that we have in Rocky Mount, Edgecombe County, and Nash County are going to be the non-traditional gang sets. We also have a couple traditional gang sets. These are the most common ones that we see with the blood gangs. We non-trade gangsters. The Grand Hustle Team is a local set. They've been around just for a few years. Valentine Day Bloods is a traditional set. G-Shine Bloods is traditional. Sex, Money, Murder as well. And then we also have a new one, YTB, Youngins Training to Blow. This is going to be a neighborhood set. Again, very, very young men. Typically with blood gangs, they started out in Southern California in the early 1980s. Again, there's certain sets that actually came from the East Coast specifically. Their primary colors are going to be red, black, and gold. There are certain sets that might differ just a little bit, but predominantly it's the red and black. They might carry flags, which people might know them as bandanas. They like to use the number 5 in a lot of their graffiti. With younger kids, they might not use graffiti. They might write it in their school notebooks or any kind of journals they have at the house. And I'll show you some of those indicators in the upcoming slides. And that number 5 is going to represent love, life, loyalty, obedience, and respect. And again, this has come from some of those traditional gang laws from the Southern California. Again, with the number 5, they like the 5-pointed star, just because it has the 5 points on it. And a lot of graffiti and notes that we'll see pass between them, they'll mark out the C's or mark out 6s, which is opposing to a Crip set. These are some common blood identifiers. It's kind of hard to see probably from the PowerPoint, but some of the tattoos that you'll see on some of the gang members, MOB is a common blood gang tattoo. And you can't see it here, but he's got DAMU, which is Swahili, and that term means blood in Swahili. So some of the things that the more you deal with gangs, you kind of pick up on some of their lingo. A lot of times what I tell parents is if you see a sign or a symbol that's in the graffiti or in their notes, or they get a tattoo, and you ask your kid, what does that mean? Or some of their friends, you want to see any kind of tattoo and ask them what it means, and hopefully they'll explain it to you. And if you don't feel comfortable asking them that, you can always contact local law enforcement, and we can probably clarify some of those symbols. Another common thing that we see with blood gangs, some of the older guys are going to be the dog paws, which are 3 little dots on their shoulders, and that's what they signify as dog paws. That 5-pointed star that I mentioned earlier, you'll see spray painted on the sidewalk, and the bottom image in the middle. And again, they have BLOOD written around those 5 points. They also have common signs and symbols and gang hand signs. You'll see that at the top right. He's also wearing that red bandana, which is very common. They'll have that somewhere. They'll probably hide it from law enforcement and while they're out in the public. But whenever we do probation searches, we'll find these hidden somewhere inside their room. As well as a little bit of terminology on that very bottom right image. If they don't mark C's out or mark 6's out, what they'll do is they'll put a K behind it. And that just means that they're a Crip killer. And that's just some of their lingo that they might use. Again, look for this in any kind of school notebook. If you don't know what it is, always refer to one of us. So, as times have changed, some of the lingo has turned into emojis. This is some of the common things you'll see, especially in younger kids. So if you get any of them and you're not really sure what they mean, obviously give us a call. But a lot of times with blood gangs, they'll have the red letters. They're able to go in there and change the colors of the letters. Any emoji that represents blood, so syringes or the actual blood drop. This crown emoji is a preset. It has a 5-point to it, so a lot of the blood gang members will use that just because of the 5-pointed crown. The little traditional blood hand sign that they're showing in the emoji on the right, as well as the dog paws, which signify those 3 dots on a gang member's shoulder. Some other things that we'll locate during searches, these might be found in kids' school book bags or on probation searches. Some of the flags that they'll hide in there, as well as these beads. You don't see a lot of kids wearing a lot of beads, so when we see them with other signs and symbols, we can associate that with gangs, depending on the number of beads. And we'll have to, let's say the number 5 with Bloods, the number 6 with Crips. But those are the beads that they typically hold. So again, with graffiti, they'll use their same indicators. The biggest thing with graffiti is if you see it, it needs to come down immediately, because the longer graffiti stays up, the more problem it's going to cause for that area. For law enforcement, it lets us know what kind of gangs might be in that area. But as a homeowner, if you see graffiti pop up on one of your properties, you need to call us so we can come annotate it as well as get rid of it quickly. Because the longer it stays up, it's probably going to be some form of disrespectful to the other gang sets, as well as they're trying to claim territory. So we don't want them to do that, right? So we need to go ahead and get rid of it. And you'll see just some of the common signs and symbols in their graffiti. So the biggest opposition for Bloods, you will know, is Crips. So some of the Crip sets that we have in Nash Rocky Mount are going to be 8 Trade Gangster Crips, 52 Hoover Crips, Grape Street Crips, a neighborhood set called the Hilltop Crips, and Northside Killers. They call themselves Cutthroats, and that's a small gang that's popped up the past year. Again, very low in numbers, very young. Again, they originated in Los Angeles as for some of the larger nationwide sets, and they've kind of spread across the nation. They like to use the black and blue flags as opposed to the Bloods that use black and red. It's a typical dark blue. Some of the Crips use a darker navy blue, as well as some will use oranges. It depends on which set they belong to. Again, if you see these kind of flags, just notify local law enforcement, and we'll come and try to decipher which ones they are. They'll use the number 6. So they'll use a 6-pointed star, which is the Star of David, and they'll cover that with life, love, loyalty, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Again, with the blue bandanas, or the blue flags they call it. The letter C will take the place for B's. So again, some of that lingo that we can decipher in some of their gang graffiti and notes, as well as instead of writing CK, which would mean Crip Killer, they might write BK, which is Blood Killer. So any word that has a B in it, they'll just put a K behind it. And we mentioned some of these already. So the Star of David is one of their big indicators. The blue bandana on the far right. You'll see the gentleman in the middle. He's got a blue bandana while trying to make a 6-pointed star with his hands. And they're using 6 up and a 5 upside down. That's just common disrespect to a Crip gang, to a Blood gang set. And these are, of course, some of their common emojis. The handicap one, you call them Crip gang members, so they represent the little handicapped Crip person. Again, they'll use blue items instead of the red items, so they've changed the blood drop to a blue. They'll use a typical Star of David in some of their text messages and their comments on social media. So it's kind of hard to see this, but again, this is just some local graffiti that we found a couple years back. There's a lot of disrespectful comments and things said in this graffiti, but the biggest thing that y'all need to take home is if y'all see anything like this, if it's just weird signs and symbols, just notify us. That's what our job is. We'll come out, we'll take photos of it, identify it, try to figure out what gangs made that and what gangs are disrespecting. So we can send out notice to law enforcement, do extra patrols, come out, clear the area of the gang graffiti, and I'll make contact with the homeowner so they can get help cleaning it out themselves. So, gangs in Rocky Mount, as y'all heard earlier, it started nationwide in the 80s. So it hit Rocky Mount probably the late 90s, early 2000s when we really started documenting some of the Bloods and Crip sets. And since then, like I said, it's progressed a little bit. We have approximately 21 gangs in Rocky Mount. The membership activity, they're not all 21 are active. A lot of them will disperse, a lot of them will get more members to them, but over time they kind of fluctuate. And with that being said, last year there was 192 validated gang members in Rocky Mount, and then this year there's 156. And there's a couple different reasons as to why that number has dropped. But North Carolina general statute, North Carolina law, has pretty much set out guidelines for us to validate somebody as a gang member. So all those signs and symbols that I showed you on the earlier slides, we actually use to validate somebody as a gang member. And they have to have at least 3 of those criteria. And let's say that's North Carolina state law. So every 5 years that'll reset and we have to go revalidate. So we're not just picking on certain people. We have to have a good reason as to why we're validating them. And that's the general statute that shows us how to do that. So with that being said, we pulled a couple statistics as far as gang-related incidences. So these incidents, somebody might be involved as a witness, a victim, or an offender in a gang-related crime. And in 2019, out of the total number of reports in the city of Rocky Mount, 4.5% of that was gang-related incidents. In 2020, it fell to 4.4%, and in 2021, it was 3.4%. And gang-related arrests, I apologize for it being difficult to see on there. In 2019, 6.2% of all arrests in Rocky Mount were gang-related. In 2020, 5% were gang-related. 2021, it was 5.5%, a little spike. And as of 2022, 4.4% were gang-related. So that's a brief overview of gang identifiers and common factors. I'm going to come back, but at this time, we'd like to let Yolanda Thigpen come up and talk about some of the community-oriented programs we have to assist in crime deterrence and give opportunities for children to have after-school programs in the community.
Thank you again, Sergeant Middleworth. And as she mentioned, I'm going to discuss PALS, the first one you see up there. I want to make mention that according to the national mission statement, the National Association of Police Athletic Activities League, which is national, or PAL, and its members' chapters works to prevent juvenile crime and violence by building the bond and strengthening the relationship between kids, cops, and community. And so Rocky Mount joined 300 other agencies and 501s to ensure that we have a PAL chapter. And many of you have already gathered or taken this when you signed in, so please know that some of our information is up here, our tagline, our current activities. We literally are in the midst of our basketball league, and our kids are practicing tonight, and they have games typically Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and so forth. So if you want to get your children involved in that, please get one of my cards or make sure you keep this. Also, we have what's coming up, some other activities. We've surveyed, prior to me coming on board, our children have been surveyed to see what they like. And some of this that you see listed here, they want to be involved in cooking, they want to be involved in fishing, bowling, the arts, and so forth. So we're going to make sure that happens for them, that they can have some things that are right in line with their passion and their desires versus just being on the street and unsupervised. Our coaches typically are police officers, and we're so pleased by that because these men and women have decided to commit themselves, their skill level, and their time to just ensure that our kids who love to play basketball, they're coached. And I always say it's not really just about winning and losing, because these individuals as coaches ensure that they're checking on our children in school. They take them out to eat. They are role models to these children. And so again, sports is one thing, but making sure they have an impact as a role model is something totally different. And so how do we get involved? If you ask, how do you get involved in PAL programs? Number one, you probably just need to give me a call and ask us, what are we doing now? And how can I be a part of that? We are connected with our recreation center right here and what have you. They do a lot of our registration. They do a lot of advertising for us and so forth, but we can let you guys know what's coming up next. And so typically after basketball is softball, baseball season. So if you want your children to be involved in that, they certainly can. Anybody who's interested in volunteering, you may say, well, I don't really know how to coach basketball. I don't really know sports. I'm not athletically inclined. But maybe you want to just make sure that the children are supervised. Maybe you want to donate snacks to the league and the programs. Maybe you have some expertise in some other areas, like public speaking. I see Brunson here and Sister Evangeline and others who could maybe help those children out who desire to be in front of the camera. And so again, I want to read this quotation as I then take my seat and let my colleague come behind me to discuss these other items. This says from the National PAL Organization, studies have shown that if a young person respects a police officer on the ball field, gym, or classroom, the youth will likely come to respect the laws that police officers enforce. Such respect is beneficial to the youth, the police officer, and the neighborhood and business community. So again, we're so proud of our relationships with our community, our young people, the parents, and our colleagues, the police officers, again, who sacrifice so much. They don't just protect and serve, but they also volunteer their time and their expertise. And so again, if you are interested, please make sure you get one of these flyers before you leave. And I will, as Chief have said, also, if you want to talk to me after we finish the program, I'll be more than happy to talk to you guys. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, I believe, Sergeant Summerlin. No, I'm sorry. Officer Della, I believe, is next. I'm not looking behind me. So she's next to talk about some very important programs as well that we have and that we are connected with. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Officer Della Fuente with the Rocky Mount Police Department. I have been with the police department the last 6 years. I am an SRO assigned to Parker Middle School, and I am also one of the 2 DARE certified officers at the Rocky Mount Police Department. This is the first year that we've brought DARE back, because DARE went away for a couple years, and our chief was like, we need it back, and I totally agree. So DARE has changed a little bit since I was in 5th grade. Back then it was more geared to, of course, drugs, alcohol, alcohol, alcohol. Not only is it only towards drugs and alcohol, but it's also geared to helping the kids make responsible and sound decisions. So when I go in and teach the kids, it's a 10-week program, so I go in their classroom once a week for 10 weeks. At the end of the 10 weeks, they'll graduate, they'll get a shirt, they'll get a certificate because they've completed DARE. I did want to show you their workbook. It's called the Keeping It Real method, because they're basing it off of real life scenarios. So they wanted to make it sure that we could keep it as real as possible and keep it as, the kids in real life scenarios, if they are put in those scenarios, how to deal with them. Of course, everybody knows DARE stands for Drug Abuse Resistance Education. But there's also a different type of DARE. It's the DARE decision-making model that we use for the kids to make these decisions. I don't know if y'all can see it, but it's define, assess, respond, and evaluate. So in the lessons, we'll read a passage, we'll assess the situation, we'll figure out what the problem is, what the challenge is, or what the opportunity is out of the passage. Once we figure out what the problem is, we'll assess it. So we're going to figure out what are our different choices that we can make from the problem. And then after we assess it, we're going to respond. We're going to pick a choice. And then we're going to figure out what are our consequences behind picking that choice. Once we do that, we're going to evaluate. We're going to discuss our decision and see if that was the right decision to make. And if it's the right decision you made, then of course you know you made the right decision. And that's just what pretty much all DARE is about. It's a really great program. So far the kids are loving it. They're very much engaged, and I love being with them and teaching them this awesome program. And if you guys ever have any questions about DARE, if you would like for us to do a DARE presentation at your churches or anywhere, we do have a curriculum that lets us do that we can teach it to the parents as well, or anybody in the community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sergeant Summerlin. I am the Community Services Supervisor for the City of Rocky Mount. I supervise the school resource officers that serve your schools here inside the city limits. I want to talk about two programs tonight. The first one I'm going to talk is called EKG2. That is called Educating Kids on Gang and Gun Violence. EKG was originated in 2013 from Fayetteville Police Department. And during that time, they served over 27,000 kids with the implementation of that program. It is a program that is brought into the schools for the 7th graders only. So you have DARE that starts at 5th grade, reaching kids about choices there in 5th grade, and then you have EKG2, which reaches kids in 7th grade during their curriculums. So EKG2 was a program built off of EKG1 that was started by the Center for Safer Schools, and they started a production company come in and create a movie called Choices. So we partnered. Chief Hassel wanted this program brought to the City of Rocky Mount, so we partnered with Center for Safer Schools. We started to the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, and the North Carolina District Attorney's Office chose Rocky Mount to be the first program in the state of North Carolina to have it implemented. So I'm very proud to say that we are the first school in North Carolina to implement EKG2. So that's kudos to Chief Hassel staying on this program for that. The program consists of it's 2 days for our 7th grade curriculum. It falls under the health and PE guidelines for the state, so we are allowed to go in and teach it to 7th graders. We partner with Dr. Ellis from Nash County Public Schools. They were all aboard, all hands on deck about bringing this curriculum to our kids here in the city of Rocky Mount. We have 8 certified EKG instructors that can go inside these schools and teach them for 7th grade. We will teach a total of 370 kids this year in the city of Rocky Mount, the EKG2 program. We have already completed Parker Middle School. We have completed Edwards Middle School, and starting next week, we will continue that program in Rocky Mount Middle School. It will be taught there as well. They are also working on a curriculum for 9th graders that we will be looking at to hopefully be able to continue with the 5th, the 7th, and the 9th grade curriculums to have a opportunity to continue to touch these kids as they're moving through the school system. The EKG2 program gives kids an opportunity to witness a 45-minute long video about gang and gun violence and choices, and it walks you through. It's a very good production. It's done very well, and we speak with the kids about the choices that they make. And it's two sides. They get to see the outcome of making the wrong choices, and then they have the opportunity to see the choices if they made the correct choice. And a lot of our kids, I think, they struggle with that. So it's a chance, an opportunity for them to see the choices and the consequences by making the wrong choice and what could occur. So we look forward to continuing the EKG program in Nash County Public School for many years to come. And then hopefully we will be able to build in the years to come with the next production and going to the 9th grade. The next program is the SROs. SROs play a vital role in your child's education, believe it or not. First and foremost, we are there for the safety and security of the facility and the kids, but the SROs do so much more than that. They're mentors to these kids. They're role models to these kids. They're often coming to situations where the kids are at their worst and they're vulnerable, but the SROs serve in so much more capacity, being able to talk with these kids and recognize that when things are going tough, they can speak with them. They also partner with the guidance counselors. They partner with the social workers with dealing with these at-risk kids and trying to help them get the resources that they need to help them make good decisions and good choices. We often partner with Teen Court, Eastern North Carolina Mediation Center. We partner with them. So there's a ton of resources that SROs use to help these kids. It's not always about charging or making charges or arresting these kids. These kids need someone to nurture them, someone to look up to. They need a role model, and they need options and resources to understand that they don't have to make these choices that they are making. So they play a vital role. They also sit in on parent-teacher conferences and recognize and have a conversation with the parents about what's going on in their child's life. That's something they may recognize when they see them every day. They see who their associates are, who they're hanging out with, and some of the choices that they're making, whereas the parent is not there. Especially if you're a working parent and you're home with your kids for a few hours before you go to bed and you get up and do all over again. But your school resources are there 8 hours a day with those kids 5 days a week. So it's kind of like being a parent for them. And we have a great group of school resource officers. I'm happy to say that every school resource officer that we have is a senior police officer. So everybody that's in the school are veteran police officers. And they have the opportunity to witness to these kids and talk to these kids about a lot of decisions that they're making. And through that, we have the Explorer program, which allows young kids to come in and learn about law enforcement and a side of law enforcement that we have that they otherwise may not know. So the school resources play a vital role, and they also are the ones teaching these programs to your kids. The DARE program, we have 2 certified DARE officers, 8 EKG officers, so they see the police officers, and the school resource officers are the EKG instructors going into these classrooms and teaching these kids about the decisions that they're making. And I think it's going to have an impact on these kids going forward. One thing I do love about EKG is we have a pre-survey and a post-survey after the class, and that data will be collected, and hopefully next year we'll be able to report back the findings from that data about this program. This was one of the programs when Chief Hassel was looking at programs that it had the data backed up to support the program, that it was effective and it does work, is one of the reasons Chief Hassel chose this program to bring to Rocky Mount. Thank you.
So those are a couple of prevention programs that the Rocky Mount Police Department has implemented. So we only get to encounter children for a very small amount of time of their day. When it's a school resource officer, that's between, 7 o'clock in the morning until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we don't get to see every single warning sign or every single detail. We try our best to. So these are some warning signs that as parents, as members of the community, you might be able to see that we won't be able to see. So a kid that might potentially be in a gang might admit that they're hanging around with other gang members. They might not admit 100% themselves that they're in the gang, but hey, my friend's in the gang. Those are some signs that you might want to look for, and some language that should be a red flag for you. Shows an unusual interest in 1 or 2 particular colors or a particular logo. So a trick that I like to use, there's a Texas Rangers emblem that is used for a lot of Crip members in Rocky Mount. So my favorite question is walking up and asking them, who was the lead pitcher for 1991 for the Texas Rangers? Who's the greatest all-time pitcher in baseball? So if you're a legit Texas Rangers fan, you should know it's Nolan Ryan, right? So if a kid's wearing nothing but Texas Rangers logo and can't tell me that, then it might be a sign or a symbol, right? Has an unusual interest in gangster-influenced music, videos, movies, or websites. Uses unusual hand signs. Again, I'm not going to expect you to leave this presentation knowing every single sign and symbol and hand sign, but when you start seeing things that just look weird and you have a question about it, that's where you call us into place, and we'll try to help you decipher some of the things you're seeing. Has specific drawings or gang symbols on school books, clothing, walls, or even tattoos. I'm seeing here recently there's a lot of kids at a younger ages that are actually getting tattoos. They're walking around middle schools with neck tattoos. So they're not getting them, obviously, with parental discretion. So some of those symbols might be gang related. So again, just take a picture of it. Let us know. We're always here to help decipher them. Has unexplained cash, goods, or clothing. So if you're the parent and you haven't bought it for them, where are they getting it from, right? So some of the questions you might want to ask. If they're carrying a weapon, they're not in your presence and you're not allowing them to hold that weapon, that should be a major flag. There should be no reason for a juvenile to have access to a weapon unless you're taking them as the parent to go teach them weapon safety drills, right? And it's constant trouble with the police. So unfortunately for a lot of juveniles, if they're hanging out with other gang members, and those gang members tend to be adults, if somebody's encountered by the police, then they're going to hand the gun off to a kid because they realize that juvenile laws might not be as strict as adult laws. So with that being said, if they start getting more and more trouble with law enforcement, it might be some of the kids that they're hanging around, so there's some questions you might want to bring up to them. So what are some things that you can do to prevent some of them warning signs? You need to start early. The first slide that I showed you said some of these kids are admitting that at 8 years old they're getting involved with gangs. So it's never too early to talk with your kids about gangs and gang violence. So spend quality time with your children and talk with them. This is going to be a difficult conversation. I can't tell you exactly what question you need to ask your kid to open up this conversation, but the sooner you can get that dialogue with your children, the easier it's going to be when they start getting 12, 11, and 10 years old, and all of a sudden they got kids at school telling them about being in a gang. You should have that good communication line with your own children. Get involved in school activities. If a kid is busy, they don't have time to be in the gang, right? So try to get them in as many programs, PAL programs, get them in as many sports, after school activities you can get them into. Be a positive role model and set the right example. Kids are little sponges. They absorb everything that they see. So let's give them some positive role models. Know your child's friends and your child's friends' families. You should be in their business. I hate to say it, there's no easy way to say it. If they're hanging out and they're going to spend the night at somebody's house, well, who you spend the night with? What's their names? All that kind of good stuff. Encourage good study habits. A goal-oriented kid is going to be able to see down the future, right? If they don't have any goals in life, then they're not going to look past tomorrow. So make sure they have goals. Make them set their own goals, short-term goals and long-term goals. When they start doing that, they're thinking past today. They're thinking past tomorrow. What do I want to be when I grow up? Those are some conversations you need to have with them. Teach your kid how to cope with peer pressure. And when you're in middle school, you're in high school, we all experience it. Whatever happened then lasted a lifetime, right? Just keep on talking to them. You know what? Somebody might be picking on you in 6th grade, but I guarantee you next year you'll be in a different school. Those kids won't be there no more, and you'll be good. Encourage your kid to participate in positive after-school activities. Again, with adult supervision. Don't just send them off to the park to play in a sport and then nobody there to supervise them, right? And talk with your child about the dangers and consequences of being in a gang. Gangs are violent, right? You got to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you don't, they're only going to see the positive that they're seeing in social media. You need to talk to them about all this stuff we don't want to talk about today and what might lead to gang violence down the road. Because you don't see very many gang members living past 30, right, that are free members of society. So you need to talk about those two options, what might happen if they stay in gangs long term. And let your child know that you don't want to see them hurt or arrested. If you let them know that they are loved, then they know they have a positive family life to come home to, right? Unfortunately, as law enforcement, once we find out somebody is in a gang, it's typically at the point where they're involved in gang-related crimes. It might be retaliation reports, retaliation violence. Once we identify that somebody is in a gang, what we try to do is there's also adult programs that they can go through. And there's some of those, I believe, that Yolanda may have brought with us today. There's counseling that they can be sent to if they get put on probation. There are probation officers that are actually gang-specific probation officers, and they offer a lot of resources. We used to offer up to like 300 to 500 resources for somebody who's in a gang that if they want to get out, then they can reach out to us and we can push them through the OIC. They can get jobs, get driver's license, try to find some affordable living that they can go to if they're willing to get out of it. But the biggest hurdle that we're finding is, are they willing to get out of it?
And for us, one of the main, or part two of the reasons for this tonight is to have our two community partners here. You know, when you have someone that's already in a gang, they may be making bad decisions, may have gotten into the criminal justice system. Now we need to be talking about intervention. When you think about law enforcement, you think about what? Suppression. I have citizens, chief, I see this activity in my neighborhood. They expect their chief, their police department to react to that, and we do. But also I recognize we have to do more than just suppression. We have to do more than just constantly in that cycle of arrest, 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 which is why tonight we made sure the second part of this program is to bring up two organizations or programs, Peacemakers, Mediation Center, to talk about what they offer our children, our young adults, that can help get them out of the situation they're in. Because in law enforcement, it seems like, sometimes that is who you call. When you see something, it's 911. It's calling the law enforcement. And in many cases, that is who you need to call. But I recognize with my staff that we got to break that cycle. We've implemented these prevention programs to prevent it to getting to the point where you need police to have to deal with something with a young person or a young adult. But then once they're in something, we need to understand how to get them. That's a great question, how to get them out. So we wanted peacemakers, we wanted Mediation Center to come and give you some tips, maybe some hints what they offer to help answer that question, to help someone get out of a gang or whatever that situation they're in their life. I have had some informal meetings with some individuals who are involved in gangs, and I would say quasi-gang leaders here in our city and the surrounding area. We have done that. We have even went to the point where my community engagement coordinator created packets. We listened to what they told us. That wasn't a time for me to do much talking. That was a time for me to listen. And I tried to understand why did they get in the situation they were in, what resources they felt they needed. And my community engagement coordinator created a packet filled with the resources they felt they needed. Anything from job placement, from completing the high school diploma, going to get a further vocational certificate from the local community college, recreational opportunities and opportunities for them and their children. So everything that they voiced to me and those in that meeting, we created a resource packet. So make sure if I ever have the opportunity to be in front of someone that may be in a gang, I can pass that off to them. And many agencies in our city is in that packet. And it came from that meeting, which I thought was very helpful. Again, as your police chief, I'm always thinking, I'm always listening to other organizations in our city, what is the underlying cause for some of our issues that we may face, not just here in Rocky Mount, but across our whole country. And together, if we can identify what those underlying issues are, that's what we need to target. Because if we target that, then we can hopefully start continuing to see the crime go down that we're seeing in our communities. It's not just in our schools, it's within our, I'm gonna say, not saying schools, within our community at different age levels. I think here in Rocky Mount, we have a lot of resources here in our city. I've said this before, I just think we need to make sure we're doing an excellent job or a better job sometimes in making sure we make that connection. We need to make sure we all know what resources we have in our city and surrounding areas, and making sure that when we see someone who need a particular resource, whether it's addiction, whether it's mental health, whether it's someone who needs mentorship, someone who needs extracurricular activities, anything that goes in that realm, we need to know what community resources are out there to make that connection, and then make that connection. So I think, we have a host and a variety of programs in our city that's doing a great job. I just think we all can do our part when we see signs of something, whether it's gangs, some kind of making bad choices, whether it's mental illness, whether it may be drug dependency on whether alcohol or drugs. What do we do? Make sure we know what resources there, and make sure we do everything within our power who care for that individual to make that connection. And that was part of the night's purpose. And we've done something similar last year. We had our symposium over at the event center. We had a host. It was at least maybe 15 or more community resources from the Rocky Mount, Nash, and Edgecombe County area to be there for those 75 individuals who came out, to make sure they know what services we have in Rocky Mount, that if they need one, they were there to give them the information to make that connection. And I want to make sure that we're doing our part, like everyone else in this room will do, to make that connection for someone who may need it.
Certainly our chief for filling in his always feedback and being very on point with those questions that are presented to him. So as he said, at this time, we're going to have our first presenter, Miss Rita from Peacemaker. She'll talk a little about who she is, and maybe could just kind of introduce herself a little bit better than I can, and what her organization offers. And then when she's done, we're going to hear from Ms. Cynthia from the Mediation Center of Eastern Carolina. And again, they will talk about the services they offer as well.
Thank you. First, I want to give honor to God. I'm just so thankful to be here today. I am representing Peacemakers as a whole. Peacemakers is a nonprofit Christian organization, which is so needed in this area right now. We serve the South Rocky Mount community as well as the surrounding areas. Peacemakers has a lot of programs that are golden to this generation now. We have a lot of education programs for the young and for the adults. We are a place where you can get many resources. We educate, we equip, we provide, we do all we can do. If you let us know that there's a need, we try to service you in that area. We started out being givers, which we are givers, because you're always giving of yourself, whether it be knowledge or a hand, a lending hand to lift you up. So that's the main goal for Peacemakers. But we do have a accredited school, a private Christian school, that I'm very proud to be a part of its up and coming. This is our first year. We now have kindergarten and first grade. Next year we will add the second grade in the fall of this year, 23. And the following year we will add the third grade and the fourth grade and so on till we get to the 8th grade. But it's going great. God is really good. He has laid his hands on this facility. We're praying, and I sprinkle oil over the doors that we don't bring in anything that is not necessary or harmful to our kids. We have a Freedom School program during the summer, which is a 10-week program, which is a reading program. It's national. I've been a part of that program before I moved back to Rocky Mount. I'm born and raised in the South Rocky Mount community, and that is what's very, very important to me. My joy is real. I love giving back to where I'm from. I love giving and doing things for people that are in need. And that's what we're supposed to do. God is a giver, and he's a forgiver. We have to give chances. Peacemakers is for hope, and hope that changes things. We want to make a difference. Our Freedom School is very high strung. They don't even hire the teachers if they're over 30. It's so much energy. It's just high. I put it on my Facebook every morning. It'll wake you up or you turn it off. It's one or the other. But it's where the kids learn. Kids like repetition. They like to do the same thing over and over each day. They like challenge. So they come in and they're like, my team is crunkier than your team. I can't even spell crunkier, but they can say it, and it works. So we want to empower them where it matters. If it's saying an equation over and over that makes sense, that's what we're doing in our Freedom School. It's geared around reading. We need special reading programs for our kids. I have come in contact with kids that are in the 6th grade that cannot read at all. And it's because they're being left behind. We have one-on-one. We have many volunteers. We're always seeking volunteers. We are doing the right thing at Peacemakers. We're giving back in the areas that people are putting them aside because of their behavior. Their behavior does not identify them. They don't have structure in the home. And I'm not saying everybody, but when they go to or come to us or go to school, they are in a structured environment and they go back home to the same thing. They're just looking for love and attention and companion. So that's what we do at Peacemakers. Freedom School is just a fun summer program. We are having to accept applications in January because when you get close to June, it's booked and we're ready to go. We also offer a after-school program, and my director and coordinator is Miss Deanna Pittman. She's sitting there. She is over the program, and this program is for after-schoolers that need that one-on-one attention, that need help with their homework, that the parents need a little extra couple-hour babysitting privileges, but we're there for them. They need to eat again. Who knows if that's the last time of the day? But we provide food for them, we provide snacks for them, we give them what they need, and we sow in them the love of Christ. Ms. Deanna has changed the program's trajectory enormously. We have weeded out, and I don't say handpicked, they withdraw themselves. If they're not interested, they're not going to come. And this day and time, their parents cannot make them come. So the ones that are there because they want to be, because they're getting something, they're gaining knowledge, they're gaining friendship. We're talking to them about their future plans. We're offering them colleges to start looking at. We have a basketball court. We have an amazing playground that we offer for the whole community. We don't want to put any no trespassing signs out, even though we get vandalism on a regular, but God fix it up, clean it up, and make it better. So everything that's done is for the good of God. And if we know that deep in our heart and teach and train these children up in a way that they will grow, and that's what they're getting. I walk past sometimes and they're praying together that they have a good day. So our after school program is amazing. We also have book parties on one Saturday a month. A book party is where we give them as many books as they want. You don't even think we have that many books. But there are homes that do not have any books. No magazines, that's just not heard of because that's not their interest. So when you know what a person likes, that's what you give them. And to like it and see that their parents engage with them, play with them, read with them, do their sight words, all that school stuff, it makes them want a book. It's like, Miss Rita, I want a chapter book, knowing they can't read, but they want to give them a chapter book. So this book party, we have fun, we have food, we have play, we enjoy every holiday. I like to celebrate, so that's right down my line. I'm the party girl. So we make it special for them so that they can enjoy life. There are so many things that they're not accustomed to because their parents or family or whoever is raising them or grooming them, if they are not interested, they're not going to pass that on. And you get what I'm saying when you're involved in I don't like using negative words, but when you are at home and things are not happening and going up, you kind of narrow your life is going down to. So we like uplifting, give them and encourage them. We like educating them. We also do a Christmas toy store each year in the very first of December. It's where we used to give. Now we have figured it out that you appreciate it more when you have to do a little bit more for it. So we get these amazing donations and contributions from all over, hundreds of thousands of dollars of toys, and we sell them to the parent. The kid is not allowed to shop with them for 80% off of the retail value, 80% off of the clearance value. You can get a computer for $15, a real laptop. Sometimes if I know your needs, I'm going to give you one. If I know the needs, if we know what's going on, if we see that your parent is trying and that's what we want to see, we're going to help you every way we can. But the toy store, we give out, I think it's over 900 families that came through this past year in 2022. Also, you can get involved with Peacemakers Home Revitalization Program, which is now another separate entity called Building Shalom. If you hear what I'm saying, everything is Christ-based, because we're supposed to be Christ-like. And that's one way to get these kids off the street. We have adult classes. It's called Hometown Hires. It's where you go to school for 1 week, We will give you a certification. We have many partnerships in the city of Rocky Mount and surrounding little local cities like Tarboro and little cities that have contacted us, that is partnering with us, that call us on a daily saying, do you have somebody that can fulfill this position? We give you the means that you need. We help you with your resume. We do actual interviews with you. We give you and provide you with interview clothes. And that's my part. I like to dress, so I like giving them something to make them feel good about themselves. That program is now ran by Mr. Lemanuel Williams, and he helps people get different things that they need taken care of, like getting your records straight, getting your finances in check, going through this program so that you can be a first-time homeowner, which you never thought you could be. But I'm going to wrap it up, and I thank you guys for listening, and Peacemakers is there for you, and we're a great resource, and God bless you all for listening.
Thank you again, Ms. Rita. And certainly I want to add that I believe that your ED told me that you guys have a program going on right now, maybe a fundraiser. So again, thank you so much for coming and sacrificing your time to be a part of Rocky Mount Police Department's Gang Resource Awareness 101. So at this time, we're going to ask Ms. Cynthia to come forward. She's going to talk a little bit about the Mediation Center.
Good evening. How's everybody doing this evening? All right. My name is Chastity Lucas Lawrence. I'm from the Mediation Center of Eastern Carolina. And I'm here to talk to you tonight about conflict resolution and anger management, how it pertains to the gangs. Okay. So one of the things that we try to remember whenever we are trying to resolve disputes between parties is we have to remember that the number one thing that every human being wants to be is understood. I need for you to understand where I'm coming from. You don't have to agree with what I say. You don't have to like what I say. You don't have to like me. But you have to respect that I do have that purpose. I have a way in this world as well. As for anger management, it's a way of us utilizing tools to get to the root of problems. It might not be within the community, it might be within that individual. What is it that infuriates you or enrages you? And how can you take that energy and transform it from something that is destructive and negative and turn it into something that's positive and beautiful? And how can you teach other people? Because it doesn't mean anything for you to keep it all to yourself. Let's share it, okay? Let's share what you've learned. Let's pick up the next person. Teach one, reach one. Also, conflict resolution. There are so many ways that we have learned to deal with conflict. We've learned to avoid it, act like it didn't happen. Oh, well, I don't really need to delve into it. I don't need to touch it. I don't need to bother with it. I just let it slide. Let it slide. It'll be okay. But then we don't realize that anything slide and continue to slide creates a buildup. And that might not be the best for us or for our community. I think Robert Frost said it best. He said, good fences make good neighbors. And I say that is very true. Once we realize what our boundaries are, we're not casting things out or keeping things away from us as much as we are embracing things. And that's a beautiful thing. So through conflict resolution, we can learn to embrace each other. Through conflict resolution, we can learn that not all things require violence as an answer. And at the Mediation Center, our mission is to help individuals resolve conflict in a peaceful way. And to me, there's no better way to do that. than to have two people that can't see eye to eye on something. And it's a beautiful moment when you see that light bulb come on, or you see they're learning each other, and they're learning this is not a bad thing for us to talk it out and be able to express ourselves and come up with something that we both can live with, a peace that we can both have. I want to thank you for this time, and I want to thank you for coming here, because you being here on this Thursday night, you could have been anywhere else, but you decided to be here with us. And we show that that is the commitment that you have to this community. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Before you leave the podium, can you just discuss the mediation services that you guys have at the mediation center?
Okay. Where do I begin? For one thing is, we are in 12 different counties in Eastern Carolina. We have, one of our programs is Teen Court. We also have anger management, as I mentioned before, and that's available for youth and for adults in our community. We have court mediation in some of our counties, as well as community mediations in all of our counties. We also have girls empowerment in some of our counties, Man Up, and these are for kids that are in middle school up into the lower levels of high school, just giving them a sense of pride in themselves and learning that also we don't have to resolve our problems in a violent way, that there is always a peaceful answer.
And that is the purpose of tonight, bringing our community together to let us understand what we have in our community. And it's going to take all of us working together to ensure that we do everything we can to prevent and to intervene in the lives of our youth and young adults in our city, period. We have seen some decreases, yes, but I want to continue to see decreases. I want to continue to see positive things from our actions. So tonight was really just the beginning. And I hope all of you that are here, there are other organizations here like Mr. Green and the Boys and Girls Club. There's mentoring our schools. Mr. Howard is here with our school system and his program, mentoring program. I want us to take this opportunity in this place here at Booker T to make sure that if you have a program, I want you to make sure that you talk with someone in here to make sure when they leave here, they know what you have to offer within our community. Don't leave here without some information that you didn't know when you came in here, okay?